so glad to have you here. In this video, I'm going to give you a few life lessons I learned from the movie Sorry to Bother You. For those who've forgotten or just didn't see it, here's a quick synopsis. In Sorry to Bother You, Lakeith Stanfield plays Cassius Green, a young black man who whitewashes his voice to become a successful telemarketer. As he rises up the ladder of success, he finds himself in the center of a corporate conspiracy. There's a lot to unpack, so let's get into it. Life lesson number 1. Everyone wants a worry-free life. At first glance, it would seem that Langston, played by Danny Glover, is suggesting that Cassius puts on whiteness because people like buying into whiteness. However, what he is actually suggesting is people like buying into the idea of a worry-free life. And unfortunately, most people imagine that as whiteness. Which brings me to my real question. Are we ever allowed to be truly carefree? This level of freedom for a black person seems fragile. So much so that it is likened to whiteness and performative or childish for us. Worry-free on black folk often feels like a cautionary tale, like it's somehow going to be snatched away from us. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't any black people living a relatively worry-free life. I'm sure there's somebody who can't wait to comment about their worry-free lives. But what I am saying is we hardly ever get to see that in a public and celebrated way. Definitely not in your average television production or story that's meant for the masses. I'm suggesting that worry-free black folk don't get enough representation. We have plenty of rappers and social media gurus and celebrities in general who show off their riches, whether real or fake. But how often do we really get to see black people just be? I'm talking about black folk being themselves unapologetically without there being some consequences or some room that they can't get into because they are unapologetically black. I'm talking about black folk getting to just be without having to worry about or look out for someone trying to bring them down a peg. How often do we even imagine ourselves this way, especially beyond childhood? Comment below. Do you believe we are encouraged to imagine or seek a worry-free life as black people in America? Life lesson number 2. It's easy to talk about change when it don't cost you anything. Langston says what they are selling is more like Holocaust. But Cassius continues trying to become a power caller. When Mr. confirms that they are selling slave labor, Cassius says, I can't be a part of this. It was easy for Cassius to say this isn't right as long as there was no money on the table. But when he found out how much money he stood to make as a power caller, then he changed his tune and asked, well, what isn't slave labor? At Steve Lift's party, Cassius became whatever they wanted him to be. The same man who was slightly offended when he thought Langston was saying, put on whiteness so you can get this money, shrank himself for the enjoyment of Steve Lift and his non-black friends. When Steve Lift revealed his big plan, Cassius hesitated because after all, $100 million is nothing to sneeze at. Cassius has already inhaled this suspicious white powder, so it's not unfathomable that he would take the deal. But whether he takes the money or not, change literally comes at the expense of his body. Before the sequence of events, the reality that worry-free existed sucked. But Cassius didn't really truly care until his own life was on the line. Before he inhaled a suspicious powder, he wouldn't have gotten involved in the fight, let alone started it. Now, it's easy to judge Cassius for all of his choices, but honestly, most of us are only interested in change when it costs us nothing. We wouldn't all say yes to selling slave labor, but we also wouldn't all go out of our way to ensure that slave labor ended, especially if doing so meant losing as much money as Cassius stood to lose by standing up against the selling of slave labor. Even the most charitable of us do not quickly give our money and time to causes that do not affect us, regardless of how worthy the cause is. The causes that positively affect us and the people who look like us gain our greatest support. We will create hashtags and drag everybody on various social media platforms, but we will not put our hard-earned cash or bodies on the line for causes that are not truly dear to us. But whether you like it or not, change often comes at a cost. And if you are not willing to pay that fee, are you truly invested in seeing change happen at all? Life lesson number 3. Doing the right thing is performative. Shows like I Got the Bleep Kicked Out of Me are harmful for the sake of someone else's enjoyment. I love to see a mother bleep get beat down and humiliated. Makes me feel all warm inside. While the line is cringy and arguably inhumane, it is true to the psyche of many, most of whom won't admit it out loud because we are socialized to say such things are bad and to pretend we hate things that we secretly enjoy. When Cassius goes on the show, they make sure they humiliate him in several ways before ever hearing what he has to say. When he shows proof of what's going on, they gasp, but it's all performative. In the words of Cassius, they are turning people into monstrosities and no one gives a bleep. And to make matters worse, the bad guy, Steve Lift, is uplifted because a lot of money is being made. While we may not be ignoring the existence of horse people in America, terrible things happen on camera all the time and nothing happens. As a country, we have seen the hate crimes committed against people of color. These crimes are sometimes perpetrated by the police, yet racist folk are still uplifted and racist rhetoric is still spouted out loud for everyone to hear. And excuses are still made. Of course, there are plenty of people who proclaim to be outraged. Several groups organize publicized discussions about race that overlook the real issues. Many companies have created cute speeches to pander to black folk. Racially sensitive platitudes have been orchestrated, like the Democrats kneeling in honor of George Floyd, and murals have been painted to imply that Black Lives Matter. But very little real change has occurred. We need laws and policies put in place to protect us. Uplifting words and cute images are nice, but they do not solve the problem. Without action, it's all performative and a cheap pacifier. Furthermore, if you take police brutality and race off the table, we still have to deal with the reality that most people have negotiable morals, at least in one area of their life. All it really takes is a narrative that we can agree with. Don't believe me? I'll give you an example. Most people would agree that stealing is wrong. However, many people don't really believe a stolen candy bar or stealing paper clips from work are a big deal, especially if the thief of the candy bar is a child and the employer doesn't pay very well. Most would overlook the child or blame the parent for not teaching them better. Many would say the employer should pay better and the employee is justified. To not steal is one of many morals that we tend to hold dear, but can be persuaded to look the other way according to the circumstances and rationale. Since our morals are sometimes negotiable via narrative, it's no wonder that the right thing is sometimes elusive, which leaves those who refuse to be left out of the conversation only playing at doing the right thing. Life lesson number 4. Capitalism is a game with few winners. It might be easy to say the WorryFree storyline is unrealistic, especially since the employee contract would not be legal, and as far as I know, no one has figured out how to turn humans into horse people. However, amongst all the absurdity lies a very relevant point. The American economy is very dependent on the exploitation of the poor and disenfranchised. Our labor and wage laws allow it. While many of us have or will work a dead-end job at some point, few of the many will actually demand change. The average American isn't invested in creating policies that would keep businesses from legally exploiting their employees because we're all fighting to be on top. The disbursement of wealth in this country is designed to keep everyone in their place. So many of us cling to the idea that we could go from nothing to great wealth in this country without acknowledging the reality that most won't. Truth be told, the American dream is a hamster wheel, especially for the extremely poor and those of color. This is not to say that the average American doesn't have money status symbols, such as a nice house or car. But when you consider the reality that most of us live paycheck to paycheck and do not own half of these things, we aren't winning. This is a capitalist society. He who exploits the most people at the greatest profit wins. Do the math. We can't all win at a game that depends on the exploitation of many. Now, I know someone's watching this wondering, did you like the movie? On a scale of 1 to 5 stars, I give Sorry to Bother You 4.8 stars. This movie is layered. The plot is creative and the execution is superb. It's witty and thought-provoking. Needless to say, I loved it. My only real complaint is the use of the character Detroit. For so much of the movie, she doesn't seem to exist outside of Cassius. We hardly ever see her without him or extensions of him, such as his family, friends, co-workers, causes, etc. When we do, his absence is bigger than the other person or people in the scene. There is not one thing or person she's involved with that can't be tied to him. If I am honest, no woman seems to exist in this movie outside of a man. I'm not sure if it was intentional, but it was definitely hard to miss. Now it's your turn. Don't forget to like, share, hit the bell, and or tell me your thoughts down in the comments. Did you like the movie? Did you learn anything? Or was it just a good time?